GM, KEP Posse. This is Kianga Ellis, Kianga Ellis Projects on Sunday, December 7th, 2025. And welcome to the Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party. How is everyone doing today? Are we ready? Are we ready for the Sunday shows? Do we have an idea of what we're going to be subjected to for the next couple of hours? I have an idea. Although I have been away for a couple of days, I've been a little bit offline, working on an essay that dropped last night on Paragraph. So check it out. My first Writer's Coin publication called They Call Me Somalia. And I hope that you all will check it out. Check us. Actually, there are links everywhere. There's a video. There's also a performance. So there's two works. There's the essay and there's a performance. And there are links and videos on our YouTube, Rumble, my personal X. This is a personal essay. FHO Money, and also on at Kianga Ellis for Kianga Ellis Project. So I'm not going to say, actually, probably not going to talk about the essay today. I want some of you to get a chance to read it for yourselves. I think there's some interesting twists and turns there that relate to whatever political conversation we're about to have. My second coffee is boiling. You know how we do it. We get settled. I've already got the TV ready. Primed. This is the local Albany, Central New York, like local news. But in a little while, we will tune into State of the Union. So get your coffee, your water, whatever you need to do. Make sure you have on enough layers if you are saving money by not turning on the heat like I am. And I will be right back.
From Waco to the Hill Country, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice on December 7th are honored and not forgotten. Vicksburg, Geraldine Torres Video.
Saving a life thanks to some quick thinking. Up next, we meet one teenager who learned life-saving measures in school and used those skills when it mattered most.
Life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. At home, Spectrum Internet is how you gain uninterrupted. And since Spectrum One includes a line of mobile for 1 year, it's only logical we help you dominate everywhere else too.
So easy.
It's only the seamless connection you love at home, anywhere you go. It's only everything. Activate your included mobile line today at no cost.
It's the juiciest time of year in rainfall.
Yeah, we could too.
That means company by the fire. That's when the ambiance.
And the brothers tend to talk about people get murdered around here.
And those of the unexpected.
Well, what's the next?
And something new tradition.
So you know it's valuable.
Oh, shut up.
However you go there.
Nothing's nothing really with you.
It's young.
Okay. You know how we roll on Sunday mornings. John Deaton for Senate in Massachusetts. Second cup of the day. And I'm getting it together, y'all. Even my morning walkies just didn't totally kick it in gear. So I think this is going to do it. No fear, never give up. Let's see. We've got 10 minutes. Oh. So what's been going on? Let's see. I just skimmed a few posts. Let me put this on mute while we talk before State of the Union. So I just skimmed very briefly. So if something really big that's new happened in the last, I don't know, 36 hours, then you have to tell me. But here's my guess. So what we like to do a few minutes before the show is try to guess, what are going to be the topics that are covered on State of the Union. We start with State of the Union on CNN. Then we do Meet the Press. Meet the Press with Kristen Welker. And then usually the last half hour of Face the Nation. And if, it's a very engaging time, flip over to Fox for, the last hour until sometimes we go to 12, sometimes not. Just depends on the vibe, Sometimes the Sunday shows are kind of draining and boring, and sometimes they're energizing, but they're always fascinating, and it is just a great way to suss out what are the talking points, what are the political eggheads following. We know that what we hear today is not necessarily, it's usually not a reflection of reality as much as it is, people just talking their books. But we like to hear from the politicians. We like to hear, their presentation. And this is the day that all of that happens in spades. And particularly, I usually catch the more interesting people on Fox later in the afternoon, more like 2 or 3. Because it's just tradition my whole life, really, watching Meet the Press. So Sunday mornings is really the time for this. So let's see. We can expect to hear more about the boat strikes and the hearing, I guess, that the Secretary of War, I'm not sure who was at that hearing. I didn't actually watch that coverage live. I mean, that event. I don't know if it was even streamed for the public. Maybe not. So we can expect to hear about that. I saw the news that Jazzy Crockett, the Supreme Court, obviously, okay, this is big. The Supreme Court ruling in favor of the new Texas map. It's hard to say. There could be things that are clearly big news, but if they're a win for the Republicans, the mainstream, liberal news will just not even speak about it. So I don't know if they'll. I think they'll have to. So then seeing the news this morning about that eliminates Jasmine Crockett's district. So I guess the idea is that she's gonna definitely run for the Senate, and there's some coordination afoot in terms of filing her paperwork tomorrow, and whoever is going to be running for the new district. So I don't know. I saw some posts about that. Maybe we'll hear more. What else? The J6 bomber. It's really interesting to see how much the liberal mainstream news covered that. So I also was in and out of that coverage over the week. So I'll be curious to catch up and hear, who's speaking about that. Very curious situation, isn't it? Let's see, what else are we going to hear about? We got 6 minutes. If you have ideas, there's a new hashtag for the show, for the Sunday shows. Hashtag Sunday shows, which makes sense. The hashtag we tried last week also connected to some other junk that's on X. So we're not going to use that, and those acronyms are not clear. So hashtag Sunday shows. If you're watching this on X and you want to, engage more openly than in the chat, which I welcome your comments in the chat and I'll share them as well. But yeah, so that's our hashtag Sunday shows. And I'd like to hear from you before we get started, or before, CNN starts. I want to know if we're going to get Dana or Jake, the dynamic duo. This morning, we'll see in a minute. But yeah, what else do you think is going to be covered? So what I say? I said the Texas map, this Supreme Court ruling, which was procedural, not so much substantive. We saw the J6 arrest. Will we hear anything more about the suspect in the National Guard shooting? And will we get an update on the National Guardsman who is still hanging on, praise God? We think we will hear about Jazzy Crockett's run for Senate. Is anyone going to talk about Candace Owens and Turning Point USA? I think no, but I know all of you are talking about it, and I just don't even know what to say about all of that. I am just, wow. So, welcome your perspectives and comments on that. I'm only smiling because it's all just so awful. I keep an eye on everything, but I don't know. The simulation is real, y'all. It is real. We have to be very, very careful. We have to be very careful how we tread. We don't need to be afraid, but we do need to be careful. Take in all information, primary sources, watch as much, read as much firsthand of ourselves, by ourselves, make our own assessment, and yeah, just survive. Survive. Okay, let me at least get the channels sorted. Channels ready. All right. This might be our last watch party for the season. I don't know. It's maybe time to, you know, wind it down. I hear the Black women are resting. Why? I didn't get the memo, Black women. I am not resting, but I understand why Black women are resting. Especially, I get into this in my article. They used to call me Somalia. So let me just, I think it's very interesting what Halle Berry did at the New York Times, whatever that was. I love to see it. I love to see it. And I loved to see Gavin Newsom's reaction. It was like, oh my God, no, Miss Halle Berry, no. Oh, we're gonna talk to her. I mean, you know, a lot of y'all underestimate us. You really do, but you're gonna see. You're gonna see what Black girl power is all about. All right, we've got 2 more minutes. One more minute. Okay, so what else? What else can I say in 1 minute? Nothing. I'm excited. Things I love to hate. This whole idea started because I used to want to host a brunch. When I was in law school, this was like my idea. When I graduated from law school, I was gonna host a brunch every Sunday and have people come over to watch the shows. I never got around to doing that. So, you know, 25 some years later, this is it. It's on the internet. And now instead of just yelling at the television, I could, you know, express myself with all of you, friends of Kianga Ellis projects.
The drivers, without Spectrum, we would not be able to run our business.
I'm trying to, if you see me hunching, it's, I know, I realized this light thing in my eyes, reflecting in my glasses is not ideal. I'm not a professional. This isn't like a professional podcast. This is just me. So I'm doing the best I can. I'm streaming from a different machine today, so we won't have any problems with the machine blacking out, which didn't affect your side. It just affected me. That was not cool. I have to figure out I watched Eddington last night. We'll talk about that in the break.
President Trump ramped up his immigration crackdown, targeting new Democratic cities and lashing out at Somali immigrants.
We knew that was going to be the lead story.
We don't want them in our country.
How far will this latest escalation go? White House border czar Tom Homan joins me live. Plus, out of step as Republicans fret over an affordability backlash, President Trump takes a different approach.
Affordability is a hoax, a Democratic scam, the con job.
Is that the message Americans want to hear?
So it's obviously real.
John Curtis, plus our political panel, breaks it all down. And in hot water, dueling controversies land Trump's Pentagon chief on the defensive.
It was the right call. This is called the fog of war.
Did he cross a line? Iraq War veteran and Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth weighs in ahead. Washington, where the state of our union is doubling.
I like Dana over Jake better.
Shrugging off multiple controversies this week. First, and it's
Although they're both so partisan.
Totally exonerated him, but which in reality found he put U.S. troops at risk by sharing sensitive attack plans in a group chat earlier this year. He's also defending his actions amid bipartisan blowback over a controversial so-called double tap strike on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, President Trump is doubling down on his efforts to restrict both illegal and legal immigration to the U.S. and launching new ICE raids on Democratic cities after this tirade against Somali immigrants in Minnesota.
I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Somebody said, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. We're going to go the wrong way. We keep taking in garbage into our country.
Here with me now is President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. Thank you so much for being here this morning, sir. I do want to start with the new ICE raids in Minnesota. They are sparking widespread fear and uncertainty among people in the Somali community in the Twin Cities. Now, that Somali community in Minnesota is about 80,000 people. The vast majority are U.S. citizens or legal residents. So what is the reason for sending ICE there?
Well, look, we also know there's a large illegal Somali community there. There's illegal alien community, large illegal alien community there. You know, if you're a U.S. citizen, you know, you have nothing to fear. We're looking for criminal aliens. And also, if you're a resident and you have a, you know, like a felon conviction by statute, you can be set up for deportation. So we're looking for public safety threats, national security threats, and illegal aliens. Nothing's changed, Daniel, from day one.
I talked to several state and local officials who said that the number of Somali immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally there is very, very small, and that this is about scaring people more than it is about arresting criminals. So what have you actually accomplished with this operation so far in Minnesota?
Well, we just started. I disagree with that. When people, you know, even we don't know how many illegal Somalis there are, because remember, in the last 4 years in Joe Biden, there's over 2 million gotaways, known gotaways, people caught on video, drone traffic, or sexual traffic, that crossed the border illegally and weren't apprehended, weren't vetted. And so, you know, what President Trump's doing, fixed in the last 4 years of the open border, where millions of people are released in this country, men, we don't know who they are. So we're going to do the same thing in the Twin Cities we've done across the nation. We're going to focus on those illegal alien public safety threats in these cities. And you know, if they weren't a sanctuary city, I mean, many of these people would be apprehended in safety and security of county jail. But because you're a sanctuary city, we got to send more resources there to flood the zone, because it takes a whole team to find somebody in the community where it would take one agent to arrest one bad guy in county jail. So this is exactly what President Trump promised American people we're going to do, and that's what we're doing.
So you are confident that once this operation is over in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities, you are confident that you will unearth many more illegal immigrants in the Somali community than people who are there, local officials, state officials believe actually exist?
Well, we're going to arrest every illegal alien that we find there. But again, we're going to prioritize the public safety threats, national security threats. These are target enforcement operations. And, you know, the success has been proven in Washington, D.C., New York City, Chicago, North Carolina. I mean, every city we've hit, we've arrested a lot of criminal illegal aliens. I looked at the numbers today, you know, by the end of this calendar year, we're around 600,000 deportations, in the majority of them being public safety threats.
Minneapolis, the city councilman there in particular, Jamal Osman, who was born in Somalia, told CNN that, quote, Somali citizens have been stopped on the street, asked to provide.
But we should be talking about the fraud, the multi-billion-dollar fraud. I haven't been able to run all the details down on this, right? What are the chances we get that covered? Yeah, you guys, I don't know. I need to like zero in on some of those details. Was it exclusively PPP loans, or there's just a whole rat's nest there, and we've got something going on in Maine as well, tied with whatever's happening with Somalian community that is not on the up and up, which is obviously not only involving them, right? We know that.
That the way these operations are being conducted, because the standard of reasonable suspicion is being used by both ICE and the Border Patrol in the interior operations.
Mr. Holman, the president said very clearly this week that he doesn't want Somali immigrants in America. He called them garbage. Is that the real reason this operation is happening in the Somali community?
No, I think President Trump's referring to public safety threats as national security threats in Somalia and every other country.
Well, he didn't say that. He
I mean,
said
he's been clear from day one.
he talked about the whole community.
Well, look, I'm not aware what the President Trump was thinking when he said that, but I agree with President Trump. From day one, he has said, we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. He was put in the Oval Office to run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen. That's exactly what we're doing. That's what American people voted for. So there's numerous countries that President Trump's, is looking at everybody that came to this country, make sure they vetted properly. Some of these countries don't have the proper systems in place to totally vet somebody, so we don't know who they really are. So President Trump's taking upon himself and this administration to make sure anybody that came to this country illegally that we find, and those that came into a vetting process that weren't properly vetted, because they don't have the database and information to ensure they're properly vetted, that we're going to relook at those cases and make sure they're properly vetted, and we have all the data we had from them. Some of these countries don't have the databases we have. And some of these countries don't even do the proper checks before they issue a passport to their citizens to come to this country. So President Trump's doing the right thing, make sure everybody came in legally, came into proper vetting, especially from countries that are related to terrorism or are somehow related to high numbers of overstays or high number of criminal aliens in this country. That's what he's doing. He's protecting America, and I agree 100% what he's doing there.
The Department of Homeland Security posted on social media this week that ICE does not arrest or deport U.S. citizens. Just the other day, I want to show you some video. There was an incident of masked ICE agents targeting a 22-year-old mother in New Orleans, chasing her to her home, even though she told them she was a U.S. citizen. And then there was this video, which I'm actually going to show you. It was an incident in the state of Florida. And she was released once they found her driver's license in her car and said she was in fact a U.S. citizen. So if ICE says it doesn't arrest U.S. citizens, why do we keep seeing incidents like the one I just played, so aggressively pursuing people as they say they are lawfully in America?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I started as a border police in 1984. Through my nearly 4 decades of work, I can't tell you how many times an illegal alien claimed to be a U.S. citizen. It happens all the time. But it's getting back to what I just said. Reasonable suspicion. If they have a reasonable suspicion, stop and question somebody and shortly hold them and detain them briefly. My face is a reasonable suspicion. I just am going to stay inside for the next forever. Is that the solution for me? Some of you all don't have to worry about that, but these are things I have to start thinking about. Yes. Read the essay. They used to call me Somalia. That says everything that I have to say for now on this topic. So I'm not even we're gonna talk about Eddington at the break. I'm not even gonna comment on this. articulable facts with reasonable suspicion to detain somebody and question them.
So the reasonable suspicion that you're talking about, there is releasing somebody once they're comfortable that they are a U.S. citizen. And then there's just the aggressive tactics that we are seeing in video after video. You're comfortable with those tactics that we're all seeing with our own eyes?
Look, threats on ICE officers are up 1,200%. They're being doxxed on social media. They're getting death threats every day. They've been attacked. They've been shot at. These officers all look for the worst of the worst, so they're protecting themselves, and I think they're following the law. And if any ICE officer unfortunately acts out of policy or does something inappropriate, they'll be held accountable. But we got to remember, I mean, they're under attack. We're at a place in this country where all of a sudden the ones who enforce the law are bad guys, and the ones who broke the laws are victims. I'm going to trust the men and women of ICE and Border who have been trained very well to do the right thing. But I'll say again, if someone does something inappropriate, out of policy, illegal, they need to be held accountable. But I simply think I haven't seen that. I'm not in every arrest. I'm not in every operation. I trust the men and women of ICE and Border to do the right thing.
Tom Homan, thank you so much for being here this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And President Trump said affordability is a Democratic con job. Is that the message his party wants to hear? Republican Senator John Curtis of Utah will be here in the studio next. Plus, a Democratic senator and military veteran.
I mean, here's what I will say. We have a predicament that has to be dealt with. And just emotionally reacting to a video here, to mean words from the Oval Office, I mean, it's just, there's some root causes. We did not get to this point overnight in terms of policy, in terms of culture. I mean, the way this is impacting me, and I spent yesterday, this essay flew out of me. I've never had an experience writing like that, like I had yesterday in my life. I have been working on a piece talking about, all right, I'll let you in on it. Returning to pre-racial America. This is going to be very interesting, so you have to wait for it. I don't know when it's going to be ready, but it's in the hopper. But there was a time not so long ago when racial categories just didn't exist. Like, they're new. Some of you already know that. They're new. So I am of the persuasion that the real way forward, just on everything, is to go back, not because it was all rosy and fabulous in the past, but that we need to find a path not taken. So it's more like, all right, where did we go irreparably wrong? However you define gone wrong. Can we find a path not taken in our history in this nation? And if we can find, a significant crossroad and do something different, like what would that be and where would that lead us? So I've been working on this piece kind of about that, about abolishing protected status and abolishing all the categories. You're going to hear this policy proposal from me. It's coming. So yesterday, and also, last week there was the Halle Berry comment, and then I saw that there's been some discussion in the liberal media about Black women resting. And anyway, all of it, and then of course all the Somalia news reminded me of, anyway, I discussed it in the article, in the essay. But the point really, again, I said I'm not going to talk about the substance because I want you to read it. But it's really an appeal to, as I'm always saying, like, take a beat, take a breath, like recognize that a lot of what's going on in the media and in politics, it's just chaos, like intentionally designed to puppeteer us, to puppet us. And we have to resist, not because this thing that is said or this thing that happened is okay, but because if we want to be effective in securing our liberties, in protecting our present and preserving the future, if we really love this nation and want it to survive, we will totally deplete ourselves reacting. Is it rage bait, a rage click? That's the like word of the year. Yeah, I mean, take some lessons from that. Are we going to continue to feed the beast with our energy? Remember our bibliography, the Kianga Ellis Project's bibliography, a ton of books about quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And we learned there that where we focus our attention is how reality is created. So when we're triggered in small ways, larger ways, we're neutralized and we're participating in bringing about the very thing that's upsetting us. And I wish more people would understand that about some of us and some decisions people are making around their politics, that, you know, think deeper when you see someone take a position, have some humility and say, okay, where are they coming from? And allow people to be free, allow people to have their own opinion and, you know, still be worth listening to, still be, oh, I just like, woo, lost track of time. Put a pin in that.
Just on specifically what's happening in Minnesota and the Somali community, President Trump is ramping up his attacks against Somali immigrants. He said this week they are, quote, garbage, and that he doesn't want them in the country and they should go back to where they came from. Now, after Charlie Kirk was murdered in your state, everybody talked about turning down the rhetoric, full stop.
Yeah. So listen, I've learned, sadly, I can't control anybody but me, right? And the best thing I can do is set my example. And I think all of us need to wake up every morning, look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? What am I doing specifically today to make this country a better country, to make all of our immigrants feel more welcome? That's what we've always had. And I think if more.
Well, I'm not going to welcome somebody who's like going to try and burn down my house or attack me. So let's be more specific.
So, you know, it wasn't very long ago, just a little year ago, that we elected him. And we knew very well what we were electing at the time. The country wanted a disruptor. And he's put disruptors into place, Tom Homo and things like that. And that disruption is very, very painful. But you have to remember, the reason I think the country went that direction is they were very uncomfortable with the number of things we were doing in this country. And we wanted a disruptor. And for good or bad, that's what disruption brings.
I want to ask you about the Defense Secretary, Pete
Yeah.
Hegseth. Just this week, a government watchdog.
So they're purposefully like not ignoring the Department of War thing. Just these little acts of disrespect. You know, okay, but you know, everyone's participating in the incivility. Everyone's participating in destroying respect for the institutions, which is, you know, the thing that is tearing us apart, really.
That's a question I can't answer without as much thoughtful research as I did the first time I did that vote. I think you might.
It's not research.
Yeah, but you know what the reality of it is, if you go on what's in the newspapers, it's near impossible to know exactly what's going on. We heard one day that he had put an order in to kill the survivors. The next day we're hearing something else. And the next day we're hearing something else. But I will tell you, I'm pleased with Congress's role of oversight. I think we're doing a really good job of demanding answers and getting answers. I chair the Western Hemisphere subcommittee, and we're going to have a hearing on this. You're hearing other hearings, and I think Congress really wants to know exactly what's happening and the real facts, not what's reported in the newspaper. If you go back to his confirmation, that's what I tried really, really hard to do, is like separate out what we're hearing. Let's get to the real facts and let's make a good decision.
You said that you are going to have a hearing in the subcommittee that you chair in the Western Hemisphere. Are you going to try to get the players involved in that to come up and testify?
Yeah, so listen, if I had a magic wand, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
Dana is aging backward. I just as an aside, she looks fabulous and her jacket is slaying.
whole committee, the chair and the ranking member are also asking for answers. You're seeing that not just on the Foreign Relations Committee, but I think you're seeing pretty good bipartisan quest for answers.
But are you sure about that? Because certainly it seemed that way last weekend and the beginning of the week. But then as the week evolved and the top Republican, the top Democrat on the Intel committees, for example, and American Services saw the video, there were definitely divergent perceptions of what they saw. And then, yes.
What was that Brad Pitt movie? Benjamin Button. Dana is Benjamin. No. Yeah, that's it. Aging backwards.
You need to err on the side of transparency. When we're not transparent, it just fuels.
So it should be released.
I haven't seen it, so I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, he's boring. I'm like thinking about Benjamin Buttons.
Transparency. The American people, they like to make decisions too based on facts, not just on what we tell them. And the more we can give them that information, the more comfortable they're going to feel. And that's actually one of the ways we're actually going to restore trust in government, is by being more transparent.
We'd love to see that. Let's talk about what's happening in the U.S. Senate this coming week. There is going to be a vote on Thursday to extend the Obama.
See, that I'm part of the problem. Somebody who is very decent and civilized and adult and mature, I'm like, he's boring. I can't pay attention. See, even my own brain has been hijacked by all these clown shows.
Something that has not been working, that was meant to be temporary from the beginning, is not a good vote. We know, look, we need a minimum premium for people, even if it's a couple of bucks. We know we need a cap on income. That's not a serious effort if you're not willing to talk about. Look, we know there's flaws with these, and we're not willing to change those flaws. Sadly, there are a lot of Republicans and Democrats talking about both two things. One is, how do we actually lower the cost, not just of insurance, but of health care? And then what do we do in the interim while we're waiting to do that? Those are two really questions that we're not having thoughtful conversation about. And I don't get a thoughtful vote next week. That's the thoughtful vote to say, we're just going to extend what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's fair. The fact that there are thoughtful conversations after all of these years is, says a lot about the institution in which you serve. But separate from that, the short term, it's 10 legislative days between now and when the premiums of the existing program do run out. So we're talking about people who are really going to suffer while you're saying Congress isn't talking to each other. Would you at least be willing to put a Band-Aid on it?
You can't have this conversation without saying, we took 6 or 7 weeks away from this conversation while we had this silly shutdown. We wasted, in fact, valuable time. These conversations were going on before the shutdown. They totally stopped during the shutdown. But even under that, in the best of circumstances, these are complicated issues that you're not just going to be able to throw out there in a couple of weeks.
The president called the term affordability.
No, he's just boring. My mind just, you guys have no idea what all the thoughts. I'm just thinking about all these other things. Well, I'm sure that's, useful to, I never seen him on TV. I mean, I didn't even recognize his name, but, the senator from Utah. I can't pay attention. I'm going to try again.
But people know costs are up. As Republicans, as Democrats, as elected officials, we would be wise to realize that really matters to people, and we need to be taking that into account in every decision that we make.
The algorithms in social media, yes. I mean, I'm obsessed with this as a parent, as every parent is and should be. You have a bill, bipartisan bill with Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, calling on social media companies to bear responsibility if their algorithms cause harm to everyday Americans. I know that your goal is to get social media companies to change the algorithms, but Do you really think that's realistic?
So,
Guy, we know what this is about. It's coming from the left. Oh, you're causing harm. So what's harmful? Who gets to decide what's harmful? And we're hearing it on the right. Oh, hate speech is like trying to muddy the waters and make some of us think that hate speech is unconstitutional. I mean, this is the most serious thing that's happening right now. Our First Amendment, our constitutional right of free speech. Everyone throws it around. And the people who talk about it, I mean, they're not always about it. We have to protect this with our dying breath. We have to learn about what it's for, what it means, and how language across the political spectrum is being used to seduce us into, a digital totalitarian dystopia.
For war crime, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee will join me next.
Okay, that was very boring. All right, I don't remember where I was leaving off. I got very excited before that last segment, and I no longer recall what I was talking about. I mean, something to do with us creating some distance from the day-to-day outrage and having the capacity to reflect on our politics and accept some discomfort and some pain and responsibility because we want to get somewhere. Not because we want to virtue signal or feel righteous in the moment or have a facade that is applauded by others because we said the right thing or we did the right thing for our category in our little box that we're supposed to live in and monkey around in. But we now are not going to make it if that is how everyone just continues to do personal politics. So yeah, that's how I'm rolling. That's what I'm encouraging. That's how we're doing it at Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects. We have thick skin. We're trying to peer through the fog. We know that where we focus our attention is what we manifest. And so, ergo, it is 100% necessary that we just don't have an opinion about everything, that we stay focused even when things occur that really complicate the mission and sticking with it. So read the essay. Oh yeah, I was saying about how unusual a creative experience it was yesterday, writing that essay, that I had these other related points that I thought were going to come into this essay. But what ended up happening was just I sat down and that whole essay came out 90 minutes. And it was like what you're going to read is 97% of what I wrote in one shot in 90 minutes. Anyway, it's very, very personal. It's a very personal story. And yeah, I hope you'll read it and comment, share it, and then check out the companion video. All right. Okay. Eddington. Do I have time to get into that? So I resisted watching this for a while because I just figured it was going to be a sort of biased take, a liberal, have too much liberal bias, and I just didn't want to hear it. But Joaquin Phoenix is so terrific. I mean, except for that second Joker movie, which I don't know what happened there. I mean, even he admitted that was trash. But otherwise, he's so good, right? So I did watch it, and I was impressed. So it's on HBO Max streaming this Eddington, and what's so unusual, I mean, it's important, I think, to revisit what happened to us 5 years ago, and there hasn't been enough of a cultural space to acknowledge. It's like, let's just move on. We don't talk about it. And so this movie takes you back, and it's a satire. All right, let's hear it. I'll come back to Eddington.
Suspected drug boat in the Caribbean was justified or violated the laws of war. Here with me now is Democratic Senator and Army combat veteran Tammy Duckworth. Thank you so much for being here, Senator. Secretary Hegseth defended his actions again yesterday. He compared the operation in the Caribbean to the fight against terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. Listen to what he said.
What people think is cavalier or cowboy about it is the exact opposite. These are the most professional Americans going through specific processes about what they can and cannot do, understanding all the authorities, all the laws of war, all the capabilities, and applying it. To deter our adversaries, the catch and release program of pat them on the head and release them so they can go back to the fight didn't work in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's not going to work in the Caribbean.
Like Secretary Hegseth, as I mentioned, you are an Iraq War veteran. What's your reaction?
Well, there was actually a vote by Congress to put us at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was no such vote. There was no such debate here in this situation. So the fact that we do have professionals, military men and women are the most professional. The problem is they have not been authorized to be at war. And by the way, individuals in that vote were not even aimed at the United States. So everything that they've done is been illegal. It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention, and it certainly is even illegal under domestic law. It was essentially murder with that double cut strike.
I mean, that's a very strong statement. Murder, does that constitute a war crime? Is that what you're saying?
It is a war crime. It's illegal. How will you put it? It's all illegal. Look, I've been shot down behind enemy lines under the laws of war.
I mean, it's just the way she's speaking is not responsible. It's not respectful that there's more to it than just somebody mouthing off because they're an elected official declaring. I mean, if that's appropriate, then why do we have courts? Why do we have rules of evidence? Why do we have laws and structures? And why did we build the nation with governance? If the senators get to just come on and say, oh, it's illegal, it is a war crime. I mean, that right there is a form of lawlessness. So this is where I just have preliminary concerns about how we're doing governance and politics before I even get to the substance.
Servicemen and women in jeopardy here. We're putting them in jeopardy in case they ever get shot down. We're putting them in legal jeopardy. They could be brought up in international criminal courts. And so what we're doing here is taking those professionals or utmost professionals and putting them into harm's way. And that's what bothers me the most about what Pete Hegseth is doing. He is the least qualified.
Did she say that they're putting like military in harm's way? Is that what she's saying? Like that is like, it is harm's way. They are choosing harm's way. So I don't like the emotional manipulation, the propaganda. Like there's enough here on this issue, which, you know, I'm picking my battles. This is not a lane I'm going to step into right now. But I can say that that language makes no sense. But if you're not a critical thinker, you won't even notice that she said, oh, this Pete Hegseth is putting professionals in harm's way. That's his job. That is all that it is in the Department of War. In the military, it's all harm's way. All of it, all of it.
Well, the Congress said, and quite a few of the previous boat strikes from what I've read, also, not all of them were headed towards the United States.
Senator, go ahead.
Look, if they really cared about drug traffickers, the president wouldn't be pardoning drug traffickers. They would be putting money towards law enforcement. So let's go after the drug traffickers, but let's not be committing international war crimes and internationally illegal actions to do it.
Can I just ask, just on the war crimes in the video, you read the report, you haven't seen the video, what makes you so sure that this is murder and a war crime?
You had 2 survivors clinging to half of a boat, and you went in and you killed them. That's a war crime.
Yeah. On the
Even Dana's like, okay, yeah, oh, okay.
And yesterday, Secretary Hexon didn't commit to that. He said, but it's possible that we can't release it because we need to protect sources and methods. Does he have a point there?
No, he doesn't. Not at all. He could certainly release it to the members of Congress. We all have the top secret clearances, and we are, unlike him, unlikely to put things out on signal. And so we should have access to it. And in fact, the Democratic members of the Armed Services Committee have requested access to all of the video footage, not just the one in this particular boat strike.
I do want to ask you about a separate issue, and that is that the House Speaker reportedly is working on stripping in vitro fertilization coverage from active duty service members. Now, you wrote President Trump, and you gave him an annotated letter urging him to stop Johnson. You warned him that Speaker Johnson wants to become the deadbeat dad of IVF, and not, of course, to Donald Trump's declaration that he's the father of IVF. You've been really public about your own struggles with infertility. I know this is personal to you.
Well, it is. It's also personal to me because I saw so many of my comrades who were recovering Walter Reed and other military medical centers who lost their fertility as a result of their military service. And I also, having worked in veterans issues for a long time, know that veterans suffer from much higher rate of infertility than the average population. And many women in the military would like to freeze their eggs prior to being deployed to a combat zone. By the way, Dana, this passed unanimously out of the House Armed Services Committee last year. It passed by a roll call vote out of the Senate Committee. This year, it passed again out of the House, out of the Senate Committee. The committees in both chambers support this. There's nobody opposing this other than Speaker Johnson and his religious views. Because if you believe that a fertilized egg is a human being, has personhood, then some of the processes within IVF is considered murder. And so he's stripping away something that the bipartisan groups in Congress have said, you know what? We want our military men and women and their families to be able to have access to IVF. And by the way, the President of the United States said, and he promised on a campaign trail to make IVF available to all Americans. And I can't think of a better place to make it available than the men and women who wear the uniform of this great nation.
Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the healthcare clock is ticking. Does Congress have a plan? My panel weighs in next.
Okay, the panel. I'm gonna keep my eye on. I'll keep my eye on it. I kind of talked over the panels last week, so let's listen. So many difficult issues. It's tough. It's tough. So Eddington, I won't spoil it, but as a satire, it is very smart and it is balanced. That's what I didn't expect. And it gets crazy. I won't spoil if you haven't seen it, but I really highly recommend it. I believe we have not done enough publicly, socially, to remember the collective trauma, the global trauma, the unspeakability of what happened to us in 2020 and lockdown and all of that. And this film this film just really nails it all. Nails it all. And what's also fascinating is to see a movie that integrates our digital lives. And by watching it, I realize how most film is still, I mean, I don't watch a lot of current kind of entertainment, but I feel like that's not, it's still actually showing us a world that's not what we live. It's still giving us a picture of a society where people get together in person and like relate in person. And you very rarely, at least, I mean, again, I don't see a lot of popular stuff, but what struck me with this film was how living online and our feeds and our streams and the content that we're consuming on the internet is a main character in this movie. And that struck me. It's like, wow, yeah, it's interesting to see life portrayed more honestly and reflect on how tragic it is, because often we're escaping by Netflix and chill or whatever, and we're watching people live lives that continues to obscure for us the tragedy in what our lives have become, as we are just like, so that was a really good film. So I recommend that. The other thing I've seen recently that was great, the documentary Pee Wee Herman as himself. Oh my gosh, I cried. How many of you watch the Pee Wee Herman show or know what I'm talking about? I was a little bit older. I mean, but I watched it. I was in high school and I still watched my Saturday morning cartoons, my Saturday morning shows. I don't know how many of the cartoons I was still watching in high school, but I always watched Pee Wee's Playhouse. And I just did not know. I mean, I guess that was the point of the documentary. And most people did not know about Paul Reubens. And also, I think by the time the scandal happened, I was on my way to college. So it just it hit my radar screen, but only vaguely. And, I wasn't that traumatized because I wasn't, it wasn't a child watching Pee Wee's Playhouse. I mean, I was, a teenager, so it wasn't the same kind of disappointment. All right, let's see what the panel is going to talk about.
We're exactly on the trajectory where we want to be. It's going to be fun.
It's gonna be fine. That is what you just heard from the House Speaker, his message to.
Are you broke?
Americans worried
Are you
about
homeless?
the affordability
Are you
crisis
hungry?
In America. The panel is
Can
here
you just
now.
relax?
Michael,
Can you relax?
Is that the kind of advice that you would give to the Speaker, the President, and others on this issue?
But I think you certainly want to corral sort of the rest of the party to indicate to the nation that they're all on the same page, but I don't think that's enough. I would probably advise the Speaker going into Q1 of 26 to at least have one or two major legislative initiatives that address affordability. I would also perhaps advise addressing the housing shortage. That's a great thing that impacts all Americans. And you could also message under housing the opportunity of employing younger men to help build some of the houses, since we don't know that for a fact we have a supply issue. And so I get it, but I think there needs to be a little more substance to the message.
Congressman?
Actions speak louder than words. My constituents care about healthcare costs. At the beginning of this year, the Speaker had the chance to take on the drug pricing middlemen who add thousands of dollars to generic drugs at the pharmacy counter. He chose instead to cut Medicaid. At the end of the year, he had the chance to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, lower premiums for millions of Americans, chose to cut SNAP benefits before Thanksgiving. And now Republicans have a chance to take on Donald Trump when he said that affordability is a con job, and instead they're choosing to resign from Congress. So there's no actions that back up their claims to take affordability seriously.
Well,
Politico had a poll, I think last week, where it showed what are the top economic issues, and it was housing, it was healthcare, it was cost of living and groceries. And so part of this message needs to be, we came into a mess. We are trying to get it back, but we still feel your pain. That cares about you metric is so important. And frankly, even though the congressman hit Republicans, Americans don't believe Democrats care about them either. So right now, both Democrats, Republicans, and the White House, Americans are frustrated with all leaders.
Jump ball. It's a jump ball. Who's going to win?
Affordability, because I agree with the president there. You can't just say the word affordability. We have to talk about it. That's ridiculous. Talk about housing, talk about cost of living, talk about groceries, talk about energy, talk about gas. These are the things that Republicans can get ahead of to take back that metric of who cares about me the most. That's what President Trump has always done so well in 2016 and 2024, and what he needs to get back now going into
SNL weighed in on the affordability.
And a suit. Look at the pants. It's pants. Oh, I want to see the whole thing.
And more Americans, including your own voters, now blame you for the affordability crisis. What's your message to them? He's sleeping.
By the way, that was Pete Henson.
Some amount of time in the Biden administration where people tried to argue that it was all going to be okay. This is why it's working, right? It's never an idea. I've had this conversation with some Democratic leaders earlier in the year, also on the Hill. The answer is always we can do better. We can always do more. People are in the mood for change. They want something to be different. And getting back to the point you were making, if we're not talking about how we're going to change things as a Democratic Party or as a Republican Party or any type of political leadership, you're not doing your job. And the American voters clearly are saying they're not happy.
I think you got to get the president back out there. I was watching your other show, I think a day or two ago, and I think you raised the question, when was the last time the president actually was campaigning, talking to the American people?
Tuesday.
And I'm happy. We need to get him back out there to listen to his voters, to some of those independent voters, to get an idea of what the average American person is facing. He did an amazing job last year articulating a message to contrast between the Biden and Harris administration and what Republicans could do if given the keys to the palace.
See Jamal's face, a little involuntary spasm there.
That the president is leaving, you're going to see Democratic governors step up. In Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. In New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill just had big wins campaigning on affordability. You're going to see them in this next year or two deliver, particularly, I think, on electricity rates, which are double digits in both states.
There were big issues in those campaigns.
Huge issues. And what you're going to see them do is take on these hyperscaling AI data centers and say to them, you are not having cost spillovers that are leading to rate increases for our constituents. You're putting that energy behind the meter. You are going to pay for this yourselves. And again, that contrast with Republicans in Congress is going to be ferocious. They're trying to put a moratorium on any state level laws for AI at the time the Democratic governors are going to be taking on these companies.
Can I just add it just in a bipartisan way to sort of, that's not contrasting in Congress, but to agree with what you're saying. I would like to see Republicans and Democrats actually work on addressing the fact that artificial intelligence is going to wipe out about a third of jobs in the next 5 to 8 years. And we're not talking about that at all. That's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's an American issue. And I think we can all agree on that.
Yes, we can.
A bipartisan bill on that front that would start by holding the AI companies liable for deepfakes, defamation, revenge porn, et cetera.
Well, I think the Democrat governors could take a lesson here. So, Governor-elect Spanberger and maybe in New Jersey need to see that if you don't deliver, patience is short. Voters do not have a lot of patience. You say you are going to come in and turn things around. They have a very, very short window, as we saw this year. And answering with big,
and they have a short memory, apparently.
Solutions might not be the way to do it.
So check my pinned Zeet tweet post on @FHOmoney and watch the video. You can't vote in change. And it's just on the point about the short memory of voters. It's pretty poignant that we just never remember because the politicians say the same thing for decades. And we just, keep, just thinking this one is going to be the one.
But what's going to knit us together as a people, and then what's going to knit us together economically, I think it's going to be a very powerful force.
We're almost out of time, but Congressman, I do want to mention, you mentioned Hexa. You commanded a special ops counterterrorism mission in Panama. given that kind of experience that you have, what's your view on what we're seeing in the Caribbean?
I saw how to effectively interdict drugs. You work with our allies, the Panamanians, the Colombians. You do riverine and jungle tactics. What you don't do is park an aircraft carrier off the coast of Venezuela and strengthen the hand of Maduro by playing into his narrative. What is happening here is this president is trying to talk Americans into blood for oil 2.0. 20 years ago, we saw a Republican president do this with Iraq. It was a disaster. We cannot let him do it again in Venezuela.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Nice to see you all on this Sunday morning. Coming up, President Trump loves putting his name on buildings.
Okay, so a couple of things came up. I'm glad we watched that. This first of all, the rep seeing Jake from Massachusetts, also reminded me of some news. I did a pretty good job forecasting what would be covered. I'd be very curious now to see who is on Meet the Press. But speaking of Massachusetts, where I was born and raised, and the news that Ayanna Pressley is running again for her seat. Now, she is the rep for the neighborhood where I grew up, and I have been very much watching to see if she was going to enter the primary for the Senate, because you all know who I support to represent Massachusetts and America. Please, people, understand, get to know him. John Deaton, the food stamp warrior, very, very important. So I was surprised. Here's my take. Here's the signal in her decision. She just knew that John Deaton cannot be beaten. Some of you all haven't really woken up to that fact. But he's now, in my mind, is a shoo-in, because I think she would have been the best chance for the Democrats to hold on to that seat, Ed Markey's seat. Ed Markey has been in Washington for 50 years. I don't see how Seth Moulton can beat Ed Markey in the primary. I mean, really. So I think we've got the octogenarian against Detroit Deaton. I shouldn't remind people, because some people want to have a problem because John didn't grow up in Boston or Massachusetts, but that is BS. It does not matter. The man went to law school and lived in Roxbury. Anyway, I'll have much more to say over the months of the campaign, but the thing that I want you all to pay attention to is the Democrats are concerned. They could not afford to lose her seat. Not that I can think of any Republicans. I mean, obviously there was zero Republican representation in Congress from Massachusetts, even though 40% are registered, or at least 30% are registered Republicans, or I think 40% voted for Trump. A huge number. I think even the majority of voters in Massachusetts are undeclared, which means they're independent. It's this thing, we've seen over the centuries. They used to be called independent Republicans. I mean, there used to be this sort of category called independent Republicans, groups of people who would typically support the candidates that were not endorsed by the majority party, or if because of demographics, there was a social stigma, or it was otherwise difficult to fully identify as Republican. So you have a lot of that in Massachusetts. And I'm tired of seeing people online, most of whom are probably AI bots sent to mind control you, talking about who can't win because this place is all blue and yada, yada, yada. It's just not facts. So we can read a lot into Ayanna Pressley's decision not to run for the Senate. And I think I'm just looking at the board. And then after that news, I think the Supreme Court decision came after, but I expect that, whoever are the strategists, whoever's like the data people, see something happening that's probably not what they're talking about, not what they're projecting. Right? But we're reading the tea leaves, and that win for Texas's new map, the way Halle Berry just kneecapped Gavin Newsom. Wow. And the Democrats are they're kind of scrambling. We've got that young whippersnapper in Brooklyn who wants to challenge Hakeem Jeffries, and he's just straight like, I am socialist, or worse, or let me not be pejorative. But yeah, it's obviously on the right, there's Trouble in Paradise with the base and MAGA, and I don't know, maybe that's someone's making a calculation that let's go scorched earth on fill in the blank, and that's going to, as they say, red meat to the base, rally the base. I think that's really, short-sighted and not smart, because this coalition delivered power. And I know that some groups of people are thought of by others as, not impactful or not up for grabs, but I will just say that that assessment is incorrect. And I'll just say Black women are in play. I'll just, that's the demographic I know the best. I don't really like to do identity politics and all of that, but some of you all just leave me no choice. I want to talk about meme coins, not meme coins, but tokenized memes. Like I want to get to the good stuff, and I want to talk about tactical futurism. I want to talk to you all about. I don't want to miss the start of Meet the Press. The AI conversation. I mean, it was brought up, I guess, by one of the panelists, in terms of these policy issues that are so important, these national conversations we have to have. Like, no, the AI moratorium on states being able to exercise their constitutional rights, our constitutional rights, is not a policy decision. It's like a kind of a policy that says there is a political process that we expect the oligarchy to operate within. All right, that's all. Are you up for that? Can you handle that? Good, because we need to have the conversation. We want to innovate. We want to have growth. We want to have honest conversations. We want there to be fair and free consensus about how this is going to go down. Make your arguments. We're here. We are the American people. You need to discuss this with us. It impacts us. And I know we're a bunch of, useless eaters in some minds, but I think that, yeah, we're not gonna just roll over on this. It's too important. So I hope on one of these shows we can start getting, I don't know how many people watch these shows anymore anyway, but this is an arena, and let's get over to NBC. I want to hear it discussed out in the open before they just try to ram it in the dark of night. The AI moratorium stuff.
News Channel 13, breaking news coverage you can trust.
This Sunday, Pentagon pressure. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faces growing scrutiny over the strikes on alleged drug boats as questions grow over the legal basis for the attack.
Something was on fire. And it's exploded in fire and smoke. You can't.
My internet connection isn't great. I don't know. I have the best internet that the capital city of New York State can provide. I mean, this is 2025, and this is what we're dealing with. Latency. I mean, it's just not a serious country. We're not.
And Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. Plus, hard lines. President Trump dismisses concerns about the cost of living.
This is fake narrative that the Democrats talk about affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody.
As the Supreme Court allows Texas to use its newly redrawn map that favors Republicans. What will it all mean for next year's midterms? I'll talk to Democratic Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. And crackdown, immigration.
Okay, good. I'm glad that Meet the Press is going to talk about redistricting, because that's what I was saying. I mean, this is where I think we want to look. We want to look at Ayanna Pressley not running for the Senate. We want to look at, try to find clues as to where we're going, where this which way this jump ball is going to go in 2026. I'm betting on red, but it's just actually it's impossible to know. It's impossible to know, but I think we're going to find out. Let's see what happens.
From NBC News in Washington, the longest running show in television history. This is Meet the Press with Kristen Welker.
Good Sunday morning. The demand for answers is growing louder over the Trump administration's targeted strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in the hot seat over a September operation that targeted 2 men who survived an initial strike on their vessel but were killed in a second hit. The admiral in charge of the mission appearing on Capitol Hill this week for closed-door briefings with members of Congress. New this morning, NBC News reported that Admiral Frank Bradley told lawmakers that everyone on the boat was on a list of military targets, while the Trump administration maintains its actions have been legal.
I do not personally see survivors, but I stand because the thing was on fire. It was exploded in fire and smoke. You can't see the digital. This is called the fog of war.
I think you're going to find that this is war. I think you're going to find that there's a very receptive ear to doing exactly what they're doing, taking out those boats. And very soon we're going to start doing it on land too.
The reaction breaking along party lines,
On
with
land?
Republicans defending the Pentagon's decisions, while top Democrats on Capitol Hill expressing deep concerns.
The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we'd expect our military commanders to do.
What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have 2 individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States.
And joining me now is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who was in those briefings this week, Republican Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator Cotton, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Thank you so much for being here after a very big week. I want to ask you about our new reporting. NBC News is reporting this morning that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, his order was to kill all 11 individuals on that boat because they were on a list of narco-terrorists who intelligence and military officials determined could be legally targeted. Was Secretary Hegseth's order to kill everyone on the boat because they were on this target list, Senator?
The order, like the entire operation, Kristen, is to destroy these drug boats, which are running drugs into our country from foreign drug cartels and traffickers that are killing hundreds of Arkansans every year and hundreds of thousands of Americans. Now, of course, before our military conducts such a strike, they have multiple sources of intelligence that give high confidence that everyone on that boat is a foreign drug trafficker, not an innocent civilian who's being human trafficked. for instance. And therefore, Secretary Hegseth said, and I agree, they're all valid targets. Now, this controversy, let's remember, all started with a Washington Post story about 9 days ago that said after the first strike, there were 2 survivors that were helpless, and then they were ordered to kill these helpless survivors. That's simply not the case. They were not floating in the ocean on a wooden plane or in life jackets. They were on the capsized vessel. They were not incapacitated in any way. It was entirely appropriate to strike the boat again to make sure that cargo was destroyed. It is in no way violation of the law of war. And I think the Washington Post owes Secretary Hegseth, and especially Admiral Mitch Bradley, a highly decorated Navy SEAL, an apology for that slander.
Okay, and we're going to get to what you saw in the video momentarily, but I just want to be very clear because what you're saying is significant. It sounds like you're confirming, did Admiral Bradley brief lawmakers that in fact all of the people on that boat were on military target lists?
I did not hear him personally say anything about the military target list. Now, he had several briefings throughout the day. I wasn't in the briefing, for instance, with Mark Warner, my counterpart in the Senate Intelligence Committee. I can only say what he told me. He said they had high confidence based on multiple sources of intelligence that everyone on that boat was part of a foreign terrorist organization and been designated by the U.S. government.
So they could be legally targeted. They could be legally and legally targeted.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Before the first strike and after the first strike.
Was Admiral Bradley acting on Secretary Hegseth's orders, Senator?
Well, anytime you have an operation like this, there's an operation order. It's written down. It's got very detailed instructions. I think because this was the first strike, Secretary Hegseth and Admiral Bradley both wanted to be present and be making a decision. As you heard Secretary Hegseth in the opening say, he initiated the first strike. You've seen the video. There's a lot of smoke. It takes a long time to clear. I'm sure Secretary Hegseth had many other matters that he had to attend to, and he trusts Admiral Bradley. Once the smoke had cleared, once the cloud cover cleared, it was clear that the first strike had not destroyed the boat. Then Admiral Bradley made a decision for the second strike. Now, in subsequent strikes since then, because there's been more than 20, obviously it's no longer Secretary Hegseth or even 4-star generals making that decision, nor should it be. But on the first strike, I believe they both want to be present and be observing it.
Let me ask you about the aftermath of that first strike. The Pentagon Law of War Manual, which you're familiar with, having served in Iraq and Afghanistan, says, quote, orders to fire upon the shipwrecked would be clearly illegal. Given that, how was that follow-on strike of 2 survivors legal, Senator?
Well, again, Kristen, they were not incapacitated. They were not in the water, surviving only because they had a life jacket or hanging to a plank of wood. They were sitting on that boat. They were clearly moving around on it. That is in contrast, for instance, to another strike that Secretary Hegseth described just yesterday in October, in which you had 2 survivors who were in that state. They were essentially just dog paddling in water. And what happened on that strike? A U.S. vessel went and picked those survivors up and took them back to their home country. That's just an example of how our military makes these decisions based on the facts and circumstances of each particular case, consistent with laws and with the directive you just stated.
I hear you saying they weren't incapacitated, and yet Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington, the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, saw this very differently. He saw that video. He said, quote, it looks like 2 classically shipwrecked people. Other lawmakers who saw the video said the 2 men appeared to raise their arms, potentially to signal that they were trying to surrender. Senator, why did Admiral Bradley interpret those actions as anything other than these 2 men trying to seek help and survive?
Well, look, again, they were sitting or standing on top of a capsized boat. They weren't floating helplessly in the water. And Chris, I don't think it matters all that much what they were trying to do. It looked at one point like they were trying to flip the boat back over, presumably to rescue its cargo and continue their mission.
Or to stay afloat?
Maybe they were signaling to other airplanes or drug cartel boats because they're in waters that are just off drug cartel areas. At one point, the guy takes off his t-shirt. Maybe he's trying to get suntan. It doesn't really matter what they were trying to do. What matters is they were not in a shipwreck state, distressed, dog paddling in the water at all. And therefore, that boat, its cargo, and those drug traffickers remained valid targets. And I think what the Democrats object to here is not the second strike, it's the first strike and every other strike.
And we are going to talk about that as well. You continue to talk about one of them took off their shirt as if he's trying to suntan. But again, your colleagues, some of them saying, look, they were waving their arms around. Isn't it possible that even the act of taking off a t-shirt could have been part of it?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel qualified or comfortable to sit here and debate like whether somebody is trying to get a suntan or they were hanging this far off the boat and like which scenario it's okay to kill them versus pick them up. Like, does this not just feel like over your pay grade? I don't know. I think that the way that the media is presenting this is like is doing us a harm because it's almost suggesting that it's rational and that we're capable to be these sort of armchair, you know, judge and jury over these military situations, which I'm not saying that everything that's going on is a-okay and on the up and up, but I object to it being presented, like a midday soap opera for all of us to just sit around and debate whether he was in the boat, they were out of the boat, they were a threat, they were on the list and not on the list, and that people feel that that is just easy to suss out because they're watching Meet the Press, and I think that degrades our sensitivity and appreciation and respect for the difficulty, gravity, and specialization. So I'd love to see a better presentation, a more honest presentation of what is an appropriate way to think about the military. I mean, you think about, speaking of Black and brown people being targeted, Obama and his drone killings in Africa and the Middle East. It's never too late to talk about that. Did we have, and I hate the whataboutisms, I really, really do. So I don't want to just do that as the big gotcha. Like, look here, not over there. But I just draw that as a contrast of how our politicians and politics have treated matters differently at different times. So it's not just like, oh, obviously we're talking about this because this is so clearly, a war crime. Just, we understand the politics. We understand the games that are being played. And so our job is, like, again, as I've just been saying, not take the bait. Because we have to focus on, we have limited time and there's a lot to do.
Made the point, he said this, quote, if the people in these boats were captured and had a trial and were convicted, they would not be subject to capital punishment, they would go to jail. Why should death without due process be the punishment at would-be drug smugglers at sea?
Well, what President Trump is trying to do, and what I support, is to protect Americans from these drugs, especially kids. Again, we've had hundreds of thousands of Americans die of drug overdoses in recent years. And it's been proven that the best way to have a large-scale effect on these drug traffickers is to destroy these boats. Interdiction is very dangerous for our sailors or for our Coast Guardsmen. It's time-consuming, and it's clear over the years that it simply doesn't have the kind of impact that blowing up these boats do. Right now, there's been a significant decrease in drugs trafficked into our country, and I bet there's a significant decrease in the number of cartel members who are willing to get on these boats.
But the United States doesn't shoot people at the border who are bringing drugs into the country. Why should it be different at sea? Are you saying we should start shooting people at the border?
No, I'm not, Kristen, but we are going to the source where we have large-scale boats that are trafficking hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of drugs that could kill thousands of Americans, hundreds of Arkansans a year. It is a highly effective and efficient way to stop these drugs from reaching our shores.
You are talking about the president protecting Americans, Arkansans from drugs, and yet just this week, the president pardoned the former president of Honduras who trafficked more than 500 tons of cocaine into the United States. He was serving a 45-year sentence, Senator. How does that make America safer?
Well, I haven't spoken to the president about that pardon. There may be strategic reasons to pardon a former president of Honduras because of our relationship with Honduras and trying to move them in a more pro-American direction. I believe that open as a possibility. But Kristen, I think you know my general approach to crime is that we should convict them, and then we should lock them up. And once they're locked up, we should keep them locked up.
So given that, do you oppose the pardon, given that you want to protect our Kansas?
I have to know more about the circumstances. Sometimes pardons of foreign nationals who have been leaders of other countries do have underlying strategic reasons. But my approach, as you know, Kristen, to crime is to lock them up, throw them the key, and don't let them out.
The War Powers Act requires the president to notify Congress of the reason for committing combat troops within 48 hours of their deployment, and it specifies that hostilities must end within 60 days unless Congress extends that period. If the president wants to continue these strikes, which he says he's going to do you believe he needs to seek congressional approval?
No, I don't, Kristen. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of presidents using the military to protect America, going back to the earliest days of our republic. You don't have to go back that far, though. In 1989, George Bush authorized the invasion of Panama and overthrew its government because the illegitimate dictator was a U.S. indicted drug trafficker. If George Bush can invade a Latin American country and overthrow its regime, I think President Bush has every power under the Constitution to strike boats in international waters from foreign terrorist designated organizations.
Okay, final question to you.
I love that
The
argument.
Inspector General was out with a report this week concluding that when Secretary Hegseth shared secret information about the United States attack plan in a Signal group chat, he, quote, created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots. Do you still have confidence in Secretary Hegseth?
Absolutely, 100%. And I've read the report, not just the public report, but the classified report. It exonerated Secretary Hegseth of any criminal wrongdoing, the rest of the group chat as well. And Kristen, by the time they were sharing that information on the Signal app, they were also calling their foreign counterparts to let them know what had happened on open lines. I just think this is a bit of a mountain out of molehill.
But based on what the IG found, which found that he could have potentially caused harm to U.S. pilots, are you comfortable with the Pentagon continuing to use Signal to communicate sensitive information?
I'm not going to opine on what communication apps or devices our government does or does not use until the bad guys have on national
Did you
television.
encourage them not to use Signal though?
I'm confident that Secretary Hegseth is making the right decisions to protect our country, also to keep other administration officials and our foreign counterparts informed. I have total confidence in the job he's doing.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come back, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California joins me next.
Oh, wonderful.
With schizophrenia,
All right. Like I was saying, this scrutiny of the military. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's disappointing that we don't have congressional leadership that's able to take a more, I would say, gracious approach. And what I mean by that is everyone in my mind on the Hill is losing credibility because they just refuse to give anyone on the other side any credit. And so, this really ties into the redistricting issue and a point that's been made. And it's not like what, Republicans have been behind the 8 ball on gerrymandering. Let's be absolutely clear on, this, we gotta fight fire with fire. Those Texas Democrats that were here in Albany and Kathy Hochul gave that speech this summer. I mean, that outrage as if Republicans are just out of order and so lawless and so racist. What have Democrats been doing? See, this is how you know that our political establishment is just thoroughly corrupt. They do not care or mean anything that they're saying. They're only about winning. And what I think they don't understand and it's not in their best interest to understand. And this is the problem of how the districts are being more and more redrawn to guarantee outcomes for particular seats. All right, let's hear.
His robust defense of these strikes, he says that they are lawful. Let me put this question to you, Senator. I know you haven't seen the video, but based on what you know, do you believe these boat strikes are legal?
You know, we're not going to platform him. Sometimes we just skip over people. We just don't. We know what they're going to say. And again, as I said, this is just too much time. There's too much time on this. The way it's being framed, as if, you know, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're not going to get to the bottom of it on Meet the Press. We're not going to get to the bottom of it in this way. So let me continue with where I was going regarding redistricting and how Democrats have really been the primary architects over years, I guess, in the name of equality, right, and representation. But what we've seen and what we now have is a polarization by guaranteeing outcomes, drawing these weird shapes. Politicians now they can't afford to be in the middle or moderate. At least that's what they think. And I guess, you know, we're seeing that play out. And it's so extreme now to where they will twist themselves into a pretzel to avoid saying anything complimentary, to give credit at all. And this is now going both ways. Most Republicans are the same. Democrats really are this way. But this behavior, it's losing the majority. And I am fascinated to watch. I'm fascinated and scandalized to watch how it does play out for 2026, because the extremes that just want to be enraged 24/7. I personally think that even that can't hold. I'm banking on it. I am banking on the human spirit, that we can be aroused and we can be baited and we can be energized with fear and anger and revenge and winning. It does work. However, it is exhausting. It is depleting. And not to be Pollyanna, because I mean, I can be Pollyanna, but I'm older. I'm less Pollyanna than I used to be. But I still believe that generative energy has to have some positive, like, kernel. And the politicians, and I'm not saying this is easy because I'm not running, but the politician who can figure out how to be tough as nails, how to be absolutely raw and ruthless, only to the extent that they're being met with violence, right? The Bible says that the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violence take it by force, or something like that. We'll have another Bible study, and actually that is a scripture we're going to study. So when you are being met with force, there's a response that's appropriate when things are at stake. I get that. However, we are in a race to the bottom. And I actually believe that leaders who can figure out how to speak life, how to give some credit where credit's due, and make the nuance argument, say, okay, I respect this. This was a good call. However, here's what I would do, or here's how I would parse it. To show some integrity. That's really the word. Just some integrity in their position, in their argument. If you give people a little bit of that, you earn some latitude. In the way we're going in politics, most of us are just like, all of you all are clowns, all of you. And this is why Hakeem Jeffries could be primaried and really like be out. It could happen. And this is not a place I want to be. I don't think this is a place where most Democrats want to be, where we're headed. And yeah, these extremes, I don't really necessarily see that the political establishment and the people who are in positions to shape things, I think they want this. I think this helps some agenda. It's the extremes, the polarization, and I don't know, the destruction of both parties and both sides and their coalitions splintering. But that's not what's in our best interest. So, oh, he's still talking. That's not what's in our best interest. We don't want that. It hurts our heart. It hurts our soul to be so upset and angry all the time. To make all of these excuses for why we are going to support this behavior, this dissonance between people's words and what they do, between the values that this country does represent. The honor, the courage, the unity, the courage, the love. That's always been bigger and more magnanimous and more eternal and supernatural than any one of us humans who have just been put in a role, for a blip, a moment in time. None of us really necessarily is that important, although each of us has a chance. Each of our lives can matter, and that's why we have one. If we want it, if we want to take that on. And so I don't know, now I'm getting misty because I can't bear to listen to this one right here. But yeah, I really think that's what we're gonna need. And I don't see a lot of politicians in that mode, but this is where I'm excited for. I've been talking a lot about Massachusetts. But even given all these structural issues that have sort of boxed us into the types of politics that we have right now, it is a place like Massachusetts. Maybe, I don't know, Maine. Let's just stick with Massachusetts. that someone could break the mold of what's needed to win. The sort of rabid, hysterical extremes that seems to be needed to win. The way our politics and elections and media and all of it, setting to one side your views on the integrity of our elections. This is a very big area. Oh, which reminds me, part of my assessment around the Democrats panicking over their ability to hold the, not even hold, but obviously, but their ability to take the House is the success that the Trump administration is already having with the deportations and with the election integrity, because we know that our voter rolls are a hot mess. Especially, I mean, in the urban areas, in the places where we have sanctuary cities. This is not, I mean, I know the media spin is hot and heavy, and the distraction, and depending on if you are really somebody who's just living in your tiny little ideological bubble and only surround yourselves with the propaganda that makes you feel good. But that's happening. And Harmeet Dillon, the civil rights czar, I think that's what's going on in the background that is yielding panic for the Democrat Party. And let me tell you, if you cannot win your elections without non-citizens voting, well, so this is my gut feeling as to what is moving the needle, what is scrambling the Democrat Party right now. That you're not going to hear, I mean, no one's going to talk about it because they're talking their book, but that is what is happening. And I am here for it. Citizens only, living people only, voting in our elections. Pretty please. And if that happens, I don't know how Democrats keep winning. I mean,
the author of the new book, The First Eight, a personal history of the pioneering Black congressman who shaped a nation. Congressman Clyburn, welcome back to Meet the Press. Congratulations on the new book.
Well, thank you very much for having me back.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll get to your book in just a moment, but let's start with this big Supreme Court ruling this week that basically allows Texas to use a redrawn congressional map, which is favorable to Republicans. Democrats have been responding to efforts in Texas and other states in kind, with blue states like California trying to add additional Democratic seats, but some in your party, including your friend, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, are warning against this tit-for-tat response. Here's what he said, Congressman. He said, if you fight fire with fire long enough, all you're going to have left is ashes. What do you say to Congressman Cleaver and others like him who fear that this tit-for-tat response could ultimately undermine the democratic norms of this country?
I agree with him entirely. The fact of the matter is, we are seeing today, and this is so much of what the First Eight is all about, a repeat of a history that led to some catastrophic consequences in our previous history. My book is all about what happened after the Civil War, what happened when the Reconstruction came to an end that led to Jim Crow, and it's all about the Supreme Court at that time, started with the slaughterhouse cases, all the way up to Plessy versus Ferguson, made a mockery of democracy. And that is what we are approaching today. Are we going to continue
our pursuit of a more perfect union, or are we going to make a mockery out of this democracy?
Well, in your book, The First Date, I have it here with me. I want to talk a little bit more about what you write. You write that your rise in politics was made possible thanks to 3 landmark laws. Here's your quote. You say, the hard-won successes of the movement I have served in, the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and the 1968 Fair Housing Act provided the faith and promise that I could one day serve in public office. You are currently the only Democrat representing South Carolina. Your district was created as a result of the Voting Rights Act. Congressman, let me ask you, if the Supreme Court rules to further weaken the Voting Rights Act, would that effectively wipe out Democratic representation in your state for the foreseeable future?
Absolutely. When I used to teach history down in Charleston, South Carolina, I used to say to my students all the time, anything that's happened before can happen again. And this is exactly what happened before. This first state is about the first 8 African Americans that served in Congress from South Carolina. I'm the 9th. The problem is there are 95 years between number 8 and number 9. And I believe that what we are approaching with the Supreme Court could very well result in the next century being one that will repeat that which took place in the previous century in 1877.
Well, those are pretty stark words, and let me kind of push this conversation forward a little bit and have you respond to some of the rhetoric, at least, that we are hearing. This week, President Trump referred to people in the Somalian community as quote unquote garbage, even singling out Congressman Ilhan Omar. This, of course, a part of his broader crackdown on illegal immigration, but what do you make of the rhetoric that we heard this week from President Trump?
It is incredible. And of course, once again, it is not new. The number 7th guy on this list of 8, Thomas Miller, was referred to as a canary. Number 8 on that list, George Washington Murray, was nicknamed the Black Crow. This kind of nicknaming that took place after the Civil War, trying to discredit the people of color, is exactly what we're seeing now. When people see all these nicknames denigrating people, devaluing their existence, that is not the kind of stuff of which our country has been made. We got over that after the 1954 Supreme Court decision. Why should we start back in that direction? And so when you look at the Somalians out in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, she is one of the incredible young lady who has withstood a lot in her life. And I have defended her and her Somalian brethren. And I do believe that's what this country is all about. It is what made us a great country. And what we've got to do is continue that trek toward a more perfect union. We'll never be perfect, but we should always be in pursuit of perfection. And we don't do that by turning back the clock and having a future for our children and grandchildren, much like the past was for my parents and grandparents. That's not the American way.
Let me ask you about the Democratic Party now. Former Vice President Harris has said sexism and racism played a major role in her defeat back in 2024. In remarks last month, former First Lady Michelle Obama said something really interesting. I want to play it for you.
She was just terrible and many other things.
This past election, sadly, we ain't ready. Like, don't even look at me about running because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman.
Congressman, do you think that America is ready to elect a woman president, or do you agree with the former First Lady?
Well, history is prologue, and I understand exactly what Kamala Harris is saying. I had a very pleasant conversation with her last week. Michelle Obama is absolutely correct. If you look at the history, we demonstrated that we were not ready. These are incredible women who have run Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, and I think that we are getting there. That's why we can't afford to turn the clock back. We're taking 1, 2, and 3 steps forward. Let's not take 2, 3, and 4 steps backwards, which is what we're doing in these elections. So just because it doesn't seem that we're ready, doesn't mean we should stop the pursuit. It's never, my dad used to tell me all the time, son, the darkest point of the night is that moment just before dawn. And so we may be in a dark moment as it relates to women serving as president, but we may be in that moment just before dawn when a woman will serve. And in order for that to happen, they've got to run. So I want women to run. I'm going to support them. I'm the father of 3 fantastic women. I want them to keep their pursuit and not give up on this country.
All right. Congressman Clyburn, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And when we come back,
Oh man, read my essay. Read the essay, please. They used to call me Somalia. It's on Paragraph. My first post on Paragraph. Collect my Rider coin at FHO Money. And the hashtag, or the cash tag, I should say, for the essay is hashtag Somalia. I remember 2007 like it was yesterday. And it is a shame and a disgrace for Michelle Obama to say what she said. I'm just not feeling her at all. You think anybody was like, oh, we're so ready to have you in the White House in 2008? I mean, what people were saying in 2007 and 2008, and they won. What is she talking about? Because we weren't ready for Kamala Harris? Kamala Harris, who went to Atlanta and brought out some booty shaking hip hop person on stage, like as if that's celebrating Black womanhood. Kamala Harris, who, and that whole crew, Obama or whatever, who got out here tongue lashing and scolding Black men. I mean, can we, like, I want to appeal to my sisters who are resting. Come over to the other side. The water is fine. These people are not for you. They are not for us. They are not for us. Respect for our elders who have been through a lot and are trailblazers. I really mean that. But we all need to just look in the mirror and own it. Own the loss. Take responsibility. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. We are ready for the right person. America's ready. America's always ready. So this just pains me. This just pains me. And I get into it in my essay, which is why I want you all to read it. And I'm not. What is that? Oh, I like the history.
secretly sold arms to Iran, hoping to free American hostages held by Hezbollah, and diverted the profits to fund the anti-communist Contras in Nicaragua to fight a congressional ban. The Iran-Contra affair quickly grew into a major political crisis for the Reagan White House. Vice President George H.W. Bush addressed it right here on Meet the Press.
I have said that mistakes were made on this, and now we're moving forward.
Did you make mistakes?
Sure. In retrospect,
What was your response?
well, if I'd had a lot more knowledge of what was going on, I would have said, don't do this. Or if I'd have been sharp enough to see into the future that a program that started out as not having arms for hostages turned into that, I'd have said, don't do that.
But
And if I'd have been a little more, perceptive about the future, I would have said, let's convene the National Security Council to be sure that everybody who has a different opinion is heard, so the president can benefit by the advice of everybody. And I didn't do that. But now we're moving forward. Mistakes were made, and everyone admits that. And so I don't see much use in dwelling on what I told the president or not, because I am not going to now do that which I've been unwilling to do for 7 years.
Oh, hearing that voice, I'm thinking of Dana Carvey. Wow, if you grew up in the 80s, yeah, that voice. I love the historical clips. Okay, what was I saying? I was saying, we're ready for anything in this country. We really are. But what we're really ready for is for some people with some integrity. I won't be so naive as to say to tell the truth. But can you be better at lying? I mean, like, you all aren't even trying anymore. It's just that's just where it's like we feel the contempt. We feel the contempt that you just think, yeah, we just have to just do some hand wavy stuff and speak in rhyme, Hakeem Jeffries, and they'll just fall right in line. No, we're not anymore. So wait for it. Let me speak again to my melanin gifted ladies. We tried being post-Black, right? Post-racial America. That was what Michelle Obama was supposedly doing. So I don't know what she's talking about. So what happened when you ushered in post-racial America? Why are we here? Have you assessed your role in that? So my recommendation, because I come to you not just to complain, and Sunday is the day to focus on all of this, because then the rest of the week we are focusing on manifesting what we do want and not obsessing over all this junk that we don't want. So we tried to be post-Black. We tried being post-racial. It's not working. It's not working. How are we here after hope and change? How did this happen? But think deeper. I know some of you, I know what your response is, like, oh, America's just racist and just that's not the answer. So I say let's become pre-racial. Let's try that. Make America pre-racial again. I now identify as pre-Black. I was saving this for the essay, which I don't know when it's coming. So I'll just tell you now, because I want you to read Call Me Somalia, and I want you to watch the companion performance that's posted on YouTube and Rumble. Call Me Somalia. So the performance is Call Me Somalia, the video, and then the essay is They Used to Call Me Somalia.
Welcome back. The panel is here. Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, Editor-in-Chief of Time, Sam Jacobs, Peggy Noonan, columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and Democratic strategist Adrian Elrod. Thanks to all of you for being here. Susan, let me
They are so funny with their expressions.
These boat strikes, what's so extraordinary is that you had these closed door briefings this week on Capitol Hill. Democrats and Republicans emerged with two totally different interpretations of what happened. What do you make of this divide that we're seeing, what we heard from Senator Cotton this morning?
Watching the same video, seeing very different things. Look what you heard in your interviews this morning. Senator Cotton saying everything was entirely appropriate. Senator Schiff saying illegal.
Chartreuse in the house.
Where there was kind of bipartisan concern about holding the administration accountable to this specific attack on September 2nd, but also the entire.
Look at me talking about people's clothes. I like it.
Partisan corners. So if you're waiting for bipartisan oversight, not yet.
Sam, what do you make of this moment? The fact you heard Senator Cotton say he still has confidence in Secretary Hexet, but clearly not ready to fully endorse the use of signal as a separate matter. Another controversy looming over the defense secretary.
There are three different controversies right now. One, his relationship with the press and keeping people outside the Pentagon. Two, the signal gate issue. And then three, these boat strikes. And I think the fact that you asked the question is leading many people to believe, is he secure in this administration? And I would say good luck to any of us who wants to predict what Donald Trump is going to do. His values are in tension here. He set up this administration to say it's going to be calmer, more stable than the last one. We're not going to have this carousel of characters coming in and out. And at the same time, the president is an internal programmer. And as we round the corner to year one, it's possible he's ready for new characters in this administration.
Ooh, Peggy, what do you think? What do you make of that? And what do you make of what we are seeing from Congress?
I think it's interesting. Things are moving things are sort of fluid, it seems to me. Although I know at the end, everybody will go back to their corners, but the president's been president for about 10 months now. And that is long enough to get on everybody's nerves. There's an old saying in politics, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. You know what I mean? So I think I see a little bit of that going on in Capitol Hill. I do think the boat story is going to stay because at the end of the day, it has to do with accusations of war crime. I think we should all keep in mind, as Tom Cotton said, this is an administration attempt, which can be debated, but it's an attempt to keep drugs from coming to the American shores. And Americans will say thank you for that, especially American parents. I also think it's hanging on as an issue because Pete Hegseth himself has a reputation as being a guy who's unduly cocky, and his comments tend to be aggressive, and his pushback on the story has not been completely credible. So I think it's going to continue going for a while here.
Adrian, pick up on the point that Peggy makes about this is its role for some American families. And you heard the president make this argument about the fact that for parents who are afraid of or who have lost their children to drugs, they support these strikes, some of them. How do Democrats navigate this moment, given that, the politics of it?
Yeah, well, first of all, 90% of fentanyl comes from the southern border. So, I think it's important to bear that in mind. But look, here's the bottom line. I think this is where the Trump administration yet again has gotten themselves into a pickle. Democrats should lean into this. We should make it clear that we take our national security very seriously. We should also make it clear, as you heard Senator Schiff say, that the tape should be released so that the American people can see for themselves what they actually think happened. We believe in transparency, but we also believe in the rule of law. And again, protecting our national security is important, but Americans should be able to see for themselves whether or not this was a war crime.
And of course, this is all taking place against the backdrop of the midterm elections. All of this is getting factored in for voters. At the top of the list, though, arguably the economy, affordability, and what's fascinating is that we've heard President Trump really try to downplay the issue this week, referencing it as the Democratic hoax. He's going to Pennsylvania to talk about the economy on Tuesday. Do you think we're going to hear a different tone from him?
I'm almost certain we are. Here's why. The president says people don't know what affordability means. Senator Josh Hawley says people aren't dumb. And in fact, preparing for this conversation, the last night, the White House press office sent out an email, and it said the primary focus of the Trump administration is affordability. It's a challenge for the president because he knows he won the election because the Biden-Harris campaign couldn't win this argument. And he also has always offered himself up as an essential player in our lives. This is not someone who's hands off. When Time spoke with him in the Oval Office in April, he described the American economy as a department store and the president as the store owner. He told us in 2016, I alone can fix it.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard for him now to say, not my problem.
Susan, what's so great about Sam's anecdote is that you have the White House press office and then you have what President Trump says. Do the two align at some point, do you think?
No, not necessarily. Just because the White House press office says affordability is our primary item on our agenda doesn't make it so for President Trump, because he's not running for re-election. He's running at this point for history. And that's why I think you see the focus on winning the Nobel Peace Prize, for instance, and leaving his physical stamp on everything from the Rose Garden to this new ballroom to the Kennedy Center.
But surely the White House knows holding on to Congress is the only way to preserve that mission.
No, I think he is not particularly interested in any more legislation. I think he's interested in things he can do himself. So we'll
It's
see.
about investigations and subpoenas.
And he's familiar with what happens when Democrats win the House.
Hey, what a great question to pose to you. Do you think he's interested in legislating, or is he done? Is he deeply in the midterms and just trying to hold on to the House right now?
I think he's certainly trying to hold on to the House. Very important for Republicans. Of course, he's on his back heels for the last 2 years of his administration if they don't. But I was so struck by the blooper this week that the president said on the quote affordability crisis that it's kind of a con and Democratic. So whatever the heck. He sounded to me like Lyndon Johnson in the Vietnam era when people were complaining about inflation starting to go up, and Johnson said, why are they complaining? They've never had it so good. Presidents get to the point where they say they've never had it so good, and it speaks to a detachment that has begun.
Yeah.
Adrian, the parallels with what we saw with former President Biden and his re-election campaign are astounding. He struggled with his messaging on the economy. Are Democrats already cutting the campaign ads with some of the language?
Yeah, the affordability is a focus. I mean, I have American families who are trying to put food on the table and trying to put gas in their car and feed their families. Look, at the end of the day, here's the bottom line, Kristen. Affordability was the number one issue in the 2024 campaign. It's been the number one issue in every special election that we've had in the last year. It will be the number one issue in the midterms. Trump going out there and telling the American people that no, actually, the economy's fine. This is all a hoax. It's a Democratic hoax. People don't believe that. They will vote with their pocketbooks. The tale is old as time. And that's exactly what we'll see happening in the midterms in 2026.
And when they start to feel that a president has become a little detached in his interests, gallivanting a bit about in the world, having a good time, creating ballrooms and fighting with architects, it seems, you know what, the American people, they're patient. They know things go up and down. It's hard to turn the battleship. But also they want a president who's thinking long-term about creating a secure economy going forward, like in the age of AI. Everybody's afraid of losing their job. So they want to see him on the economy.
All right, guys, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. That is all for today. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. I think, what we're seeing with the president, he's in a bubble, like a very tiny, tight bubble. I agree with what I've seen some folks talking about. He's not getting his usual inputs. It does seem like the loss of Charlie Kirk is a blow to perspective reaching the president. I don't know. I am concerned that the control apparatus around his perception, what are their interests, and are they encouraging the president to sabotage himself? Like, is this happening intentionally? Or are they just so wrong? Are they just sincerely so like wrong in the way that they are coaching him? And his personality combined with that isolation and paranoia or whatever is that toxic soup of being the president of the United States, we will never know. Maybe somebody watching this will know. Good on you. Go for it. But yeah, there needs to be an intervention. There needs to be an intervention. All right, let's see what's going on. And I just have to say again, apparently I think it's the cold weather that's affecting my internet speed. I had seen that like super cold temperatures can interrupt internet service. So I'm like, it's the capital city of New York State. It's the United States of America in 2025. And our infrastructure, this is why, talking about other countries being third world, have you looked around this country? So I think you guys can handle it. Little like blurs or stoppages or whatever, it's just. It is what it is. Let's see who's on Face the Nation.
Why did it shake you so much? What specifically was bothering you?
Well, and this is sort of the distinction, and there's a lot to unpack here about whether this is an authorized military action, which it is not, and right on down to whether these were legitimate targets, and they were not. But let me go back to some of the reviews I've done of other lethal action.
Is it me, or does it seem like there's like less diversity of topics? Not only this Sunday, but in some way I felt like the whole week was extremely narrow in coverage of topics, like very drawn out, repeating on, like 3 things. We haven't heard about J6. That was my question when we kicked off, was like, are they going to? Of course not.
What they were doing, because under the law, if you spend 15 minutes in law school,
We'll hear about it on Fox.
If someone has been struck and continues to engage in hostilities, points a gun at you, has a gun, they may be a legitimate target. But if they're outside of combat, they are not. And attacking them is a violation of the laws of war. And these guys, and this is why the American people need to see this video, these guys were barely alive. Much less engaging in hostilities.
Well, the DOT Law of War manual seems to hinge a lot of that on whether the person is wholly disabled from fighting. And that is where the Secretary of Defense has used language saying they're about to return to the fight. I'm going to play for you what Secretary Hikes has said at the Reagan Forum Saturday. He described what was happening with these 4 strikes on the alleged drug-running vote.
Later, so hey, there had to be a reattack because they're.
I mean, what about Ukraine and Russia? This was a big week in that ping pong. Not a word. What about Gaza and Israel? The ceasefire? We had the Congo in the White House. Obviously this has been the case for decades. We don't get very good coverage. But this is just extremely narrow. On so far, like all 3 networks is like, what What else is going on?
How they're trying to right the boat. This was about a 40-foot boat that had just been hit with a massive piece of munitions. The conflagration probably destroyed everything in that boat, but maybe they might have swum under, gotten a radio, probably waterlogged, and radioed a boat that we're not even sure was there. So what we've had is a series of shifting explanations. Oh, and including the fog of war, right?
I mean, the Trump bonds, the baby bonds. This is how you know that this can help people. Why would they not? Why would they not cover this? The announcement this week of the Dell's gift, and we got so many more details about the Trump accounts, not the baby bonds, but the Trump accounts. I'm very happy about this. You Republican strategists need to just get all your talking points lined up on your big, beautiful bill. I don't know, what are you doing? You're not communicating very well at all. That you can win. I mean, you could just explain this investment account for children alive now and who are born for the next 5 years, and the favorable tax treatment and the investing. And this is the psychological effects of this on the country. It's just the best thing. I think it's brilliant, and we've got to talk about it. And I'm going to be definitely activating Kianga Ellis projects in the Rural Rapid Response Network to that to be part of our education, our financial literacy work in rural communities in New York and New England. Some feel-good news out of the last week for sure.
Entities of all 11. So nobody can characterize who all these people in any of these boats are. You know, I have confidence in the intelligence community to know that these are probably not guys out fishing or guys out, being tourists and stuff. They are almost certainly running drugs. But this really matters for the reason that you said. If you're going to occupy an immense amount of the American naval combat capability, you'd like to believe that you're going after the leaders, the cartel leaders, the kingpins, as they say. What we're doing here is we're taking out the equivalent of the corner drug dealer in the Bronx, right? Which, by the way, we should arrest the corner drug dealer in the Bronx. But the main reason we do that is to go after the kingpins, who I promise you are sitting in very comfortable villas right now in Colombia and Venezuela and everywhere, and watching as much of the United States Navy is dedicated to taking out their lowest level employees.
So I hear you saying they were not on an internal military target list for high value individuals. That's what I hear what you're saying.
Well, this is an interesting question. I'm not at all convinced that there is a list of individuals. Now, this is what we do in the terrorism world, right? We designate high value targets, we designate individuals. I have no reason to believe, and in fact, I doubt that there are any individuals on the list anywhere. What we are doing, and I'm not going to get terribly specific about it for obvious reasons, but what we are doing is we're picking up that this boat may be carrying drugs, and to the administration, it doesn't matter who's in that boat, because, and look, they're saying this, because if this boat is actually carrying drugs, then we can strike it. So no, I don't think there is a list of individuals. I don't think we have any idea who precisely the individuals in these boats are.
So as I understand it, these are signature strikes. This is an intelligence assessment based on signals intelligence saying this is who we believe these individuals to be. Some of these defenders of the Trump policy, like conservative columnists, have argued this is a precedent that was set by the Obama administration, which used signature strikes to kill alleged al-Qaeda operatives, including a U.S. citizen at one point in Yemen. Do they have a point here that the drone policy has long allowed the killing of suspected criminals, even without due process?
Well, there's a couple of really important
Respect for bringing up what I said. I mean, see, that just is just a tiny bit of integrity goes a long way.
Authorize the war on terror. There is an authorization for the use of military force. The original sin of this whole thing, whether you think we should be wasting these guys or not, the original sin is that there is no congressional authorization. And then in the Obama administration, they did have a list of individuals, right? Often high value targets, or HVTs as we've referred to them. And then the question was, if you have an HPT, a high value target in a Jeep in northern Pakistan, and there's a guy next to that HPT, you know, how do you feel about taking that strike? You want to take down the high value guy, but what about the young guy next to him? Well, the young guy has an AK-47, and the young guy was actually arranging for the transfer of explosives. You have that conversation, and then you decide whether you're going to take the strike. Right now, what we're doing, and again, I don't think that there's a list of individuals anywhere. They're just saying that boat is carrying drugs, and even though military is not authorized by the Congress of the United States, we're taking out the boat. We don't give a damn about who's on it.
But when you say I don't say, you are.
I mean, I don't even know how he's trying to parse that. I don't know. I just wish there was someone I feel I could trust, even just a little bit, to talk about this. And this is how it is on, you know, many matters, because it just takes so much experience and subject matter expertise that, you know, we're just not going to be able to have an informed view on, you know, 99% of things based on our own individual backgrounds or life experience. And yeah, this is why we also elect representatives and leaders. It's like, help us out. And none of these people can be trusted to guide our thinking.
Pete Hegseth said he would do that again. And look, again, you don't need to be a military expert to understand that sharing operational details before an operation is a really, really, really bad idea. If Pete Hegseth said that he would do that again, you know, he's just reinforcing what we all know, which is that he has absolutely no business in that job. One of the most sensitive and difficult jobs to do in the United States government is being done by somebody who put his own people and the mission at risk.
He said he lives life without regret at the Reagan Forum. That was the phrase, to be more exact. But Congressman Hines, always good to have you on the program. I'll have to leave it there for today. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Oh, they're just repeating the exact same segment on every show. So I've already talked about all of this. It's 11:12. So we're 2.5 hours in. I mean, I'm talked out on the war situation, or whatever you want to call it, the narco terrorists and the boat strike. Oh, we've covered it. So, all right, let's see who she has next. And if it's not anyone interesting, we'll just pop over to Fox. How's everybody doing? How you doing? Thanks for joining. Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, Sunday shows. Watch party. Yeah, what else? Last week was a big week with the Endurance live stream, the fundraiser for Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects. That was last Monday. And yeah, I just am not that talkative today. Well, I guess I have been. But normally, you know, on Sundays, there's a nice diversity of topics and characters. And this is what feeds my being able to monologue for 2.5 or 3 hours. So they just keep having the same conversation over and over again. I mean, it doesn't give me any material to like improv off of. I mean, we talked about movies, we talked about Eddington, and oh, I guess I didn't finish telling you all about Pee Wee Herman as himself, the documentary. Hang on.
To U.S. public health policy. We're joined now by former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He also serves on the boards of Pfizer and United Healthcare. Welcome back. You know, there's some pretty big news on Friday, and the American Academy of Pediatrics said they are deeply alarmed that the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Panel, ACIP, voted in this 8-3 decision to change this 30-year-long policy regarding hepatitis B in newborns. They are.
All right, we're moving on.
Both tell you insurance is not affordable, healthcare is not affordable. The question is, what are you willing to do about it? And in 15 years, Republicans' plan is still in the draft folder.
There's not a single proposal put out by Thune, Johnson, or the White House right now. Nobody. And they had 45 days to do that. It's being put out by rank and file members, not by leadership, not by the White House. And so look, I think there are Democrats like myself that will team up with Republicans to try to come up with a bipartisan solution. But we need leadership, Jackie. This idea that we don't need the speaker to advance a bill. I mean, look what happened with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, right? It took 218 members to do a runaround the speaker to get that onto the floor, and it took us months to do that. And so we do need the speaker at the table. I think that's why you're seeing frustration amongst his own members because he's unwilling to do anything on any subject, quite frankly.
Well, sir, I hear your point that, you need his buy-in to expedite things, but my point was just that it's not like, there's a wall in front of you. I mean, there are avenues, and certainly members can sign on to legislation in the meantime. It's just, as a regular person, you hear about framework after framework after framework, and it's tough to see, whether Republicans or Democrats are winning on this issue when, it looks to the average person like there really isn't much going on.
Well, I don't know if Democrats or Republicans are winning, but the American people are losing while we continue to fight amongst ourselves, quite frankly.
Okay. We will continue to watch it. We've got just a couple of weeks left, and it's certainly going to be a contentious issue and one that matters to a lot of folks. So thank you very much for your time. Congressman Jared Moskowitz, always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, Congress scrutinizes the September strike on alleged drug smugglers as Navy Admiral Frank Bradley tells lawmakers why he decided to order follow-up strikes that killed 2 survivors.
Kill me. If this is what's going to be, if this is the next segment, then we're going to wrap up. Oh my gosh, but we come here for the pain, right? We come here for the misery. But today is a special kind of misery. We're just going to boat strikes, boat strikes, boat strikes, boat strikes, hypnotize the people. What's really going on? Oh, inquiring minds want to know. So listen, everybody, I believe that Kianga Ellis Projects is going to be like landing the plane for the year. And, gearing up for 2026. We have been very, very busy this year. Go to our website, kiangaellis.com, and subscribe. Our first email is going out very soon. Actually, maybe today. I have to check. Yeah, subscribe if you want to get the KEP broadsheet. Citizen adjacent action. What can we do with what we already have, what we have, what's in our control? How can we use our agency and move forward without dependencies on things that are going away or are temporary or centralized points of failure? We will be active in parallel with the norms. Let Washington and all of this just carry on. We're taking responsibility for our own lives and our own communities and our towns. We are putting eagle eyes on governance, local governance, particularly down to the local council meetings, small towns. And that is a core part of the work for, an inner circle within the friend circle that is Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, the on-chain friend circle. There's a lot to it. I feel like after 3.5 hours of Sunday shows, we won't really do a deep dive. But I look forward to using the tools, using the Web3 blockchain tools, the utility of tokenomics, the utility of base posting. We're not speculating here. Anything you see me associate with crypto is not doing this, the investment side, not promoting it as an asset or as something you ought to get involved in for your financial future. I mean, that's just not part of my shtick.
Seen in my time in public service.
There's a vast untapped, it's the imagination that is untapped. You know, if I would have, I mean, I have many critiques of my industry, but I think it kind of also goes back to what I was saying before about us just becoming comfortable with cynicism, about rage bait being the word of the year. I mean, we've kind of given up. We've just been worn down. We've been worn out. We've given up on feeling good. So we feel like we just resigned to, we just are in a very contracted state. Yeah, we've heard enough about the boat strikes, haven't we? So we're just in a very contracted state, and we are being bombarded with fear and scarcity mentality. And, you know, this is reflecting in the expressions around us. So I have to be measured. I try to be measured in my critique around what hasn't happened in the United States, particularly around the usage of crypto technology for the very things in which the whole project of Bitcoin and, you know, the original cypherpunk ethos, you know, it's not manifesting. It's not manifesting, but I haven't given up. I haven't given up on
military.
I haven't given up on the possibility. So I'm still hanging in. I'm still hanging in. I'm still willing to try. And that is integral to what it is we are doing differently around civic engagement, civic engagement. Kianga Ellis, Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects being a 501c4 social welfare organization dedicated to this in rural communities, you know, upstate New York and New England. And yeah, 2026 is going to be big for us. And I welcome, you know, all of you watching to follow along, get involved, come down the rabbit hole. There's an intentional amount of friction, try to, you know, figure out what exactly is going on. It seems like a lot. But yeah, there's a lot. Well, there is a lot of need. Is there not a need? There's a need for a lot. So we are bringing it. All right. I think we're going to wrap up, because yeah, I think that's a good place to end the watch party. And I thank you all for joining. It's always a fun, weird thing to do. Watch TV with the internet. I like it. Again, as I said at the top, this is probably the last watch party for the year. Unless next week is just something so much that I just feel like we need to get together again next Sunday. So just keep your notifications on. Make sure you're following at Kianga Ellis on X, or me personally at FHO Money, which stands for Future History of Money. And yeah, basically we probably not, but we might, but probably not. But I'll still be on the socials, so you'll still be hearing from me. Just gonna try and, you know, recover from the year and all of the planning. And there's anyway still a ton to do preparing and supporting the friend circle for all that we're going to be doing in 2026 with the project houses and just all of it. So that'll be going on whilst resting. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone. I'll give you back 35 minutes of your life that you had planned to be here. No, you didn't plan that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe more stuff is going on the socials than we're gonna peel out of these people. That reminded me, there was one other thing. Oh, you know what people are saying, at least on X, about Venezuela? Like, what's really going on in Venezuela? What's this really about? Do you know? Do you know the discussion? Not about oil, not about the drugs. All right, I'm not going to mention it. That'll be your homework. But it ties back to my comments as to why we're seeing some of these moves amongst the Democrats. If, in fact, Republicans are in such shambles and in such danger of losing the midterms, why are we seeing the moves we're seeing from the Democrats? And I spoke about election integrity, activity. I would love to see Harmeet Dillon invited to speak and talk about her work. We're not getting coverage of that, are we? But we are getting election integrity. And that, even more so than the Supreme Court decisions, I think that's where there's some there that's not being widely covered. So that's my little nugget. That's my little goose egg for you guys who are watching here at the end. Look into that on your own time. What's really going on in Venezuela? Election integrity. Is there a relationship there? And why are we seeing signs of the Democrats being concerned? That's it. Have a great rest of your day and a wonderful week. And I will see you when I see you next time. Bye-bye.